Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris. I'm here with your host, Nick Smith. Have you ever wondered how to create an extraordinary life? Our next guest knows how. Good morning, Giants. What a wonderful day. If you haven't liked us on Facebook or on YouTube, go ahead and do that now. You can subscribe, go to the Tribe of Giants, and join our Facebook group. And Nicholas T. Smith, do we have any other amazing announcements this morning?
No, I think we're good. We finalized our Kickstarter about a week ago, so we'll start fulfilling on that pretty quickly. We had a successful campaign with that. Ryan's sitting in Santa Monica, California, so he's going to be joining us remotely, which is pretty awesome. He's going to see Steve Hardison out there, and
Nice.
we got an incredible guest today, Townsend Wardlaw. Townsend, I'll just tell a little bit from my experience of you. You came from the corporate world. You were a sales superstar, and kind of went down the spiral of drugs and alcohol and just unfulfilled in that area of your life, and chose to just set it all aside and start fresh and live a semi-nomadic life, working from wherever you can, serving people into their infinite potential, and really showing people that they might be good in one area of their life, but they have so much more possibility in every area of their life. So really creating a complete and extraordinary person. Does that sound a little bit like you, or did I just make that up?
That sounds good. It sounds like somebody I want to be someday, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially the part about how things went south for a while. It was a lot worse than that.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, we'll get into it, man. We'll dive down that rabbit hole. So we like to explore your whole journey. That's kind of the vision here, is to show the Giants' journey in your life. And so we go all the way back to the beginning of where life started for you, what it was like growing up, and then how it evolved from there, going through your career and everything. Can
The
we,
whole thing.
yeah, can we go back in time to your childhood? What was it like for you?
What was my childhood like?
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting. My parents were divorced early. I was 5. My sister was 2. Fairly, I got to see my dad fairly often. He was always around in our life. I would say that as a youngster, being an outsider would be the way to characterize, what I would say it was, right? Didn't have a lot of friends, not very socially adept, kind of a bit of a goofball and strange. I was the kid they would make sit away from the rest of the kids in class, so he wouldn't distract them. We didn't have fancy terms like ADD or any of that stuff, right? Now it was just, that guy's weird. We're going to move his desk a little further away
I think
from
that
everybody
was
else.
the label, is the I
Yeah, it was a weird one.
Yeah.
I didn't ride the short bus, but that was going to be next, pretty much. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. When I was I don't know, whenever you're in about 7th grade, we had a really good elementary school, and then junior high was not a great school in our town. A lot of drugs and alcohol, and my mom knew that. And she sent me to go take a test for a private school. I lived in Connecticut, where I grew up, and I was accepted into Hopkins Day Prospect. It was a day school, not affiliated with Hopkins University. A very rigorous, private school. And I got in there, went there. It was incredibly difficult academically, but I was very well suited for that. I've always been really smart. But it sort of took my marginalization of, I had a few friends, now I had like no friends. And it was really interesting in this really formative time, junior high, 7th and 8th grade, to have to make my way. And again, this is all, retrospectively. And at the time I was just sort of going through it. I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But it forced me to learn a lot of things, in terms of being self-sufficient and not really, frankly, caring what other people think, right? I sort of wonder many times, what if that fork in the road hadn't happened?
Right.
By the time I was in 9th grade, I went back to the public school that was in my hometown, and all of a sudden life was easy. School was easy. right? Because it wasn't that other program, which, we would have 2 hours of homework on a weekday. We'd have 4 or 5 hours on a weekend, right? And it was public school. It was like I just went to class, got A's, and went home. It was really easy, and I had friends and a social life.
Yeah.
Went off to college because you were supposed to do those things back then. I guess some people still do that. Not my kids, but some people do. And that was a lot of fun. It was interesting. I got into bicycle racing and was really passionate about that, and wanted to be a professional bike racer. So after college, I packed up my stuff and went to California to go train and work in the bike industry and surf and ride my bikes and just kind of generally enjoy life. And all these people I went to college with were going off to New York and Boston to go work at these financial firms and get jobs. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm doing that. I often joke I never had a real job till I was 27. After a couple of years of trying to be a famous bike racer and traveling and working in the bike industry, I found myself in Colorado. I was about 26, and I was working at a bike shop. And life was great. This is Boulder, Colorado, back in, I want to say, 1992, 93. It was an incredible place to be and very much laid back and relaxed. Somewhere around the age of 27, I remember waking up one day and going, I probably should do something here, right? I'd literally just been having fun and traveling. I'd save enough money to go, get on a plane to South America and wander around for a few months and come back, or Europe or whatever. And literally it was like a switch one day. I was like, I guess I should go buy a suit and get a job. I don't know why the thought came up that time, but it did.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was going to do. And I'd always been involved somehow in selling. So I said, well, I guess I'll go do sales. And I always tell the story, how do you get a sales job, your first sales job? And the answer is you take a really crappy one. Right? I mean, that's how you get into sales. You just go find.
True. Yeah.
And back then, I mean, there were pager salespeople. Probably a lot of people watch this don't even know what a pager is, or can imagine that somebody would sell it, in a corporate setting. But my first real sales job was selling long distance. Right? You guys used to have to pay for long distance. Again, if anybody's under the age of 30, they're like, huh? You pay for long distance?
You're blowing a ton of kids' minds right now. They're just like, what is this stuff? All this ancient technology.
I just picture this, like pick up your pager. Oh yeah. I got to call that guy. Did I lose you? We lost his mic. We'll keep going. Brian, you still there?
I was just thinking about. I don't know how well you can hear me because there's some background noise here too. But
yeah,
I was just thinking about
There we go.
Yeah, we used to pay for long distance. That's the craziest thing in the world, right? And long distance paging.
My corporate clients were spending, I no joke, 38 cents a minute for 800 long distance back then. I mean, I had customers that were $100,000 a month. Anyway, so I got this job, and it was the worst job in the world, right? It was this third-tier reseller. I would drive from Boulder down to Englewood, which was an hour each way. I'd do 120 cold calls to people who would mostly hang up the phone and say very colorful sentences to me. And then, drive home, cry myself to sleep on my little pillow every night, and then go back and do it again. And I did that for about 3 months, and I got really good, right? And I really got even better at not caring what people thought. And I was able to weasel myself into a better job. Like after 3 months, and I could tell the whole story of that because it's a fun one, but I won't on the interest of time. But I basically levered up into a job with AT&T, which was a brand, a real company, and trained you, did all this stuff. And that was the start of my corporate career. So for the next 6 years, as I like to say, I went from, making 14 grand a year, 14,400 it was, rolling burritos and working in bike shops, to making $270,000 a year. Like more than $250,000 a year in 5-6 years, and I was a vice president at a Fortune 500 company. It was a pretty meteoric rise, and it was incredible. The problem was I hated it. I just hated everything about it. I would wake up. It first started with the Sunday night dread of Monday. Keep in mind, I'm making more than $250,000 a year. I get to do whatever I want. Nobody would mess with me. I could pick the. I didn't even have assigned accounts. I could just choose what I wanted to work on. It was an incredible job, but I hated it. Yeah. And then it was Sunday night dreading Monday. Then it became Sunday morning dreading Monday. And then it started to be Saturday. I'm like waking up on a Saturday going, oh, Monday, right? Like, this is ridiculous. I'm out of here. So I quit and I decided I was going to start my own company. But I had no idea what I was doing or what even the kind of company I was doing. I just knew I was going to start a company. I had a name and a logo, and I started creating. I had this crazy idea that people would pay to outsource sales. I was really good at sales and really passionate about it. And I said, well, I'll go sell for other companies instead of just this one company. And it was one of the first. It's actually fairly common these days to have this sales outsourcing, but nobody was doing this 15, 16 years ago. So I started this company where we would go out and agree to sell for other technology companies and field the sales team. You know, rather than hiring one guy for $120,000 and all this risk, you could get a team that'd be highly leveraged, pay a little bit, you know, upfront. The rest would be on commission. Incredible idea. I had clients out the door, so to speak. The problem was I had neglected to really think through, how am I going to find more people like me, right? I'm this sort of naturally talented, you know, Michael Jordan sales type, to use an analogy, not to toot my own horn, but I was good and I couldn't find people like me. And it was really frustrating. There were a lot of salespeople, but they were good at what we would call order taking, right? When the phone would ring, they could take the order. They didn't know how to go out and create opportunity, create need, create demand, create conversations. And this was in Boulder, Colorado, 2002 or so, I want to say. And one day I got really pissed off because I just been dealing with all these so-called salespeople that couldn't sell. And I called up the University of Colorado. I said, hey, I'm going to run an internship program. Can you send me some dumb college kids? I'm going to teach them to sell. So we started getting these kids to show up. They had no idea what they were doing. I'd give them a whole spiel on what we were going to be doing, what we weren't going to be doing. This isn't marketing. This is sales. It's going to suck. You're going to hate it, but you can make a lot of money. And, you know, we're in like a 900 square foot office, so it's teeny. I would get like 18, 20 kids to sign up for this program. And then we'd start on a Friday, and then Monday morning, like 2 would come back because they're like, this sucks. I'm not doing it. I'm like, I told you it sucked. You didn't believe me.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was total serendipity. I started making my own salespeople, and I could get these college kids and train them and teach them and mentor them. And they were better than, you know, some dude with 10 years of experience. They were incredible. Fast forward a couple of years, I was doing this and we were running these outsourcing projects. One of my clients, which was a large Fortune 500 storage provider at the time, they're out of business now, or they've since been merged or whatever. I was having lunch with the president of sales, and he says, I'm curious, where do you get all your salespeople? They're really good. I go, oh, I make them. I was just messing around. And he goes, what do you mean you make them? Like a factory? I said, yeah, sales factory. That's what it is. He goes, make me some. I'm like, what? So yeah, make me some. Wherever. And he went on to explain how it was a real challenge for them to find entry-level talent, new salespeople. I said, I'm really confused. Your HR budget is a multiple of my revenue by like 100. Yeah, and he went on to explain why this was a really thorny problem in the corporate world. And I said, all right, how many do you want? He goes, I want 20. I said, cool, $500,000. He goes, done. I was like, oh shit. Now what do I do? I had no idea how I was going to do this.
Does that make you wish you would have asked for a little more?
I was more worried. That was plenty of money in my mind. I was more worried about how I was actually going to do this. I had no idea. Like we're at a 900 square foot office. Like I gotta make them 20 salespeople in the next 3 months. Moved into a new office. The next 3 years were like this crazy whirlwind, and we morphed into this business of taking people with no sales background and helping them gain entry into a professional selling career. And again, I could talk for 2 hours in this because it was the most incredible experience of my life, and one of the most fulfilling things, because it was changing people's lives. You take somebody who's been, you know, making $12 an hour, probably $8 an hour, and 3 months with us, and they're getting a job with a $35,000, $40,000 base salary. You know, they can make 50, 60 their first year. They'll be making 6 figures in 2 or 3 years if they're following the program. This was transformational for people, and corporations couldn't figure out how to get otherwise intelligent, curious, motivated people, you know, into a sales role. They didn't have the training infrastructure, they didn't have the programs, they didn't have the mentoring, all that stuff. So over the course of, I don't know, 3, 4 years, you know, we were making 200 to 300 salespeople a year. We'd start, you know, it was about 10,000 resumes. You know, we moved offices and got outside money, and there was this whole massive growth. We'd have 80 people on the phones at one time running through these programs. they'd be with us training for about 6 weeks, and then we'd put them on projects, and then we'd sell them, kind of like a recruiter places people, except they'd never had a sales job before. And then we'd make money on placing them. So it was an incredible thing for the companies who were getting good talent. It was an incredible thing for people. I had seniors coming through, people who were on their last job, who wanted to get into sales. We had homeless people. There were guys, I didn't know they were homeless until months later. Like literally, they'd show up every day. They showered at the Y, had a suit, went through the program. Now they're making $100,000. After I come, it's so cool. It was a lot of fun. That went well until about 2009. I shut the company down, and I could spare you a lot of the details, but I'd made a lot of mistakes running the business, right? I was an entrepreneur, a founder. I made every mistake in the book, and eventually ran out of the runway, in terms of money, in terms of sanity, in terms of health. My health was a wreck. I was a very different person then, a very different type of leader, right? I was creating massive results in the world, but all those results were like me doing it. It was very egoic. It was very, I got to wake up at this time so the sun rises, and then the sun can go to bed when I go to bed, kind of thing. And like I'm going to make everything happen through sheer force of will.
I've got to get up so the sun will get up. Is that what you just said? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sun rises when I say so. I mean, it's not quite that bad, but
yeah.
It was very much it's very common for founders. It's very sheer force of will. I'm going to do everything, right? You're not leveraging the power of the universe. You're thinking you're doing it all, which here's the news flash. That's not true. So ran that company. I don't want to say into the ground, because I was able to land it and get people jobs, and I saw where it was going to fall apart. That set in motion a lot of things in my life, right? My health had been really deteriorating physically, right? When you're sleeping 2-3 hours a night for like 5 years, that has an impact on you. My marriage was in shambles, my relationship with my children, obviously my finances. I went through personal bankruptcy, and got a divorce. And the next 10 years, so this is, let's call it 2009 until even a couple of years ago, right? I would say 4 or 5 years ago, were pretty bumpy. And by pretty bumpy, I mean they sucked. One of the posts that I did once on social media was the secret to my success. And all I did was chronicle all of the screw ups and mishaps and carnage that I'd created in my life, along the way. Life started to get better, a couple of years after the divorce, and it started to get better when I guess started catching a glimpse of where I was creating all the problems. Right? See, maybe the beautiful thing about being an infinite creator is you can create so much good stuff, right? You can create money, you can create houses, you can create riches, you can create fame. What you don't realize is you're also creating all the crap as well. You're creating all the discord. You like to think that's somebody else, right? It was my wife's fault back then that we were married. It was my kid's fault. It was, everybody else's fault when the bad things would happen, but I was creating the good stuff. And I got to see some of that. Right? I got to work with some really incredible teachers. I like to say that, God, the universe, whatever term you like, came along at the right time and kind of smashed my face on the wall at the appropriate velocity to get me to pay attention, and just kept doing it a little harder until I was really paying attention. And, I figured out my way out of the hole I had dug for myself in a lot of ways, with money, with my relationship with my ex, with my kids. I mean, that was war for a lot of years until I realized, wait, I'm doing this. And
was that the realization then, that realization that you can create anything positive or negative in your life? Was that the shifting point, or was there something else in that was another lesson that was maybe a little deeper? Or was it as simple as recognizing that you're the creator of it all?
It's good. I don't know that I've ever asked that question, like what was the turning point, because I don't think of it quite like that. But
okay,
I do think you're onto something, right? Because today, if you ask me, hey, what do you have the power to create in your life? The answer is simple. It's everything, right? Good, bad, indifferent. It's everything. And when I say creating, I'm creating. Life is creating through me. I'm not doing it. It looks like I am, but there's something way bigger than me doing it. So I would say that, very off the cuff, like it's nothing. But there was a time when these things I created, these things I didn't, right? So I guess what it is over time you start to remove the exceptions in your life.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And along the way you come across some really big exceptions, right? Oh, right? Like, the fact that my relationship with my ex and my kids and stuff is a disaster. When I saw, oh, it's my power to recreate that, that's a big exception that I just dealt
Yeah.
with, right? So and there's lots of little exceptions along the way.
Yeah. So how can you, so thinking of this, I'm thinking of the law of thermodynamics or the laws of thermodynamics,
Yeah.
right? I'm thinking that energy isn't created or destroyed. It's just transformed. And the
Yeah.
energy of our lives, the creations of our lives, they're not created or destroyed. They're transformed from one form to another. And so you went
Yep.
from the space of creating all this, not good chaos, negative chaos, and transformed it into something better for your life. Now you've got this view of I can create anything.
Yeah.
And now what do I want to transform that energy from, where it is right now to something that would improve my life? I mean, what comes up for you as you hear that?
Well, I'd love to give a little tweak to that because I like the way you said it, but I would shift it slightly to say, it's not that I can create everything. It is I am creating everything. The question is, where am I doing so consciously, intentionally, and usefully, and where am I not? Right? So when I'm going to go make a pile of money. Well, I'm very aware that I'm creating that and that I'm the one doing it. Right? When I see this fire burning over here and it's me, I might be aware that it's happening. That's sort of problem number one. I might not even be aware that I'm creating it though, right? It's happening subconsciously, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
Simple example of that, right? I work with a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, really incredible people who have gotten their company to a certain level. One of the things I say to them is founders and entrepreneurs are amazing people. They are problem solvers. They wake up every day and can solve every problem that shows up for them. They're so good at problem solving. One of the things they don't realize is they're also creating them just as fast as they're solving them, so they never run out. So they see how they're solving problems. They don't see how they're creating them. So they used to pay me, right, my clients, a lot of money to help them solve all the problems they were creating. I said, why don't we stop solving the problems? Why don't you look over here and see lighting the fires that you're paying me to put out? And that's so much more fun and so much more powerful, right? So hopefully that metaphor helps a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Just anchoring it in just a little bit more, because I think that's important, is just anchoring this lesson that's right here. This is powerful, is that awareness, that unconsciousness, which, to me, I think of consciousness as beyond it all. It's there whether we think of it or not, right? And so it's beyond all physics and everything else that comes into our world. But there's a space where we're not aware of it. Like it's present, but we're not fully attentive to it. Yeah. And so there's these problems that we create in our lives, and we don't know where they're coming from, but we're the ones that are doing it unaware.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to put out these fires, like you were saying with these companies. They're trying to put out these fires that they're creating, but they're wondering where these fires are coming from, but they're the ones creating these fires.
Yeah.
And you're like, why don't we just work on that?
Yeah. If I start with the assumption that everything that shows up in my life is there because I created it, because I have a commitment to it on some level, it completely reframes how you approach everything, right?
Yeah.
Because it could say, why am I creating this? And that's not always a bad thing, right? Sometimes I might be creating something that looks negative to learn something, right? So it's not just about finding mistakes. It's not that simple. I'll give you a beautiful example. I was flying from Denver to Phoenix. I'm in Austin right now to meet with Steve. Remember Steve Thursday? Steve Hardison, my coach, theultimatecoach.com. If you guys haven't heard of him, I guess somebody on this call is going to go hang out with him here in a little bit.
We've heard of him once or twice.
There you go. So I'm flying from Denver to Phoenix. I get off the plane, get to my hotel, talking to my wife, hang up. Good night, honey. I love you. I got my bag to pull out my iPad. It's gone. Oh, I left it on the plane. I left it in the seat back pocket. You know what they say? Don't put stuff in the seat back pocket. That's why, because you leave it on the plane. So here I am. Here's the moment of truth. iPad gone. It's on the plane. Let me check. Find. Oh, yep. That's on. Wait a minute. The plane's moving. Up. The plane's in the air. I can literally see my iPad flying through space, and I only know that because my iPad is in some mountain, right? So Houston, we have a problem. Now, what do most people do? I have done at a certain moment in time. We start freaking out. Oh my God, why did this happen? I can't believe I did, beat myself up about it, right? How did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? And then maybe what I'll do about it, but this happened to me, or blaming myself for it.
Yeah.
Instead, I kind of said, now I want to be very clear with everybody. I did that for about 17 seconds, maybe 25 seconds, right? I'm human. I'm not some transcended, enlightened Buddha, right? I spent some time beating myself up, and good news, it doesn't last very long these days, right? I've gotten to the point where I can see very quickly, oh, there's you catastrophizing something. Anyway, so very quickly, why the heck did that happen turned to fascinating. I wonder what is this supposed to be about, right? Everything happens the way it's supposed to. I did this, literally, I left it in the pocket. I don't know why I did it. I want to blame myself and create a story, but that's just one perspective. So I said, all right, well, my iPad's flying through the air. We'll see where it lands. We'll deal with it later. I started making some calls. I was like, that's silly. I don't even know where it is. I don't know how to get to it. Finally, I said, I'm going to go to bed. I said, when I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to know, I'll know it. Like it'll occur to me what I'm supposed to do. There's something here for me if I can just see it as that. If I don't label this as a problem and a failure, like there's something here I'm going to learn. That only comes after spending a decade screwing things up and thinking that's not supposed to happen. So I don't want to make it sound as easy as, oh, this guy just does it all day. No, I'd had a lot of things really bad happen that I thought were really bad in the moment. Remind me about that. I want to share a fun example from a client yesterday or Friday. Anyway, so I wake up in the morning. My iPad's in Denver. I can see it on my little Find Friends application. It's in the Denver Sea Concourse. So the plane went back there. Somebody obviously took it off. So I'm sitting there going, okay, iPad's in Denver. What is here that could, be useful or valuable or fun? I don't know what I'm supposed to learn, but I said, oh, my son Diego is in Denver. He had just come back. He's in transition. He's going to head to Salt Lake City here for the summer. I'll pick up the phone. I'll call Diego. I send him a text. Said, hey man, call me when you wake up. I have a mission for you. And I'll try to compress this a little bit, but
should you choose to accept, right? This message will destruct in 10 seconds.
Yeah. So I said, call me. I got a mission for you. He calls me up and says, hey, morning, Papa. What's up? What's going on? I said, well, my iPad's at DIA, Denver National Airport. I could really use your help in going to procure it. He goes, I'm on it. Done. Now, this is my 20-year-old son. He's amazing. It's been an interesting journey over the last 5 or 10 years, right? That would be his response in the moment in and of itself. I don't know that people watching this will truly grasp how powerful that is. Anyway, he says, I'm on it. Notice the power of commitment. I'm going to make it happen, and then I'll figure it out. Not like, well, what do I need to do and where do I need to go, right? He has learned that our commitments create. He has learned that everything is to create with. I've taught him a lot of this stuff. So to hear him say that, anyway, he goes, all right, well, do you have a screenshot of where it is on the terminal? I said, yes. He goes, send it to me. I'll make it happen. I'll get you the iPad. Cool. Done. Already, I'm going, this is what this is for. This is why the iPad is there. This is why I left on the phone to create this, an opportunity for him to go and practice what he knows now that he didn't know a couple of years ago. Hour later, I'm actually in Steve's office. I had said, hey, Steve, the only call I'll take is my son may let me know he's found the iPad. He's going to need the passcode. He goes, hey, Pops, what's the passcode? I'm standing here with the lady. She, needs passcode so he knows it's mine. I gave it the passcode. Great, got it. I'm going to FedEx. An hour later, he's got the thing. I didn't tell him how. He figured it out, right? Thank you, son. I love you. We were exchanging some texts. I wish I had my phone in front of me. I would read it to you, but the text that I got at the end of a string said something like, hey, I almost forgot to tell you, Papa. This is him writing to me. This was such an awesome experience for me. You do so much for me and always take care of me and help me out. It was an honor, a pleasure. I'm grateful for the chance to serve you, to do something for you. Like, this whole thing was about him having an opportunity to help his dad, save his dad's butt, Really, right? How often do our kids get that opportunity? You know what that feels like? I mean, we all know it feels like to do something for our dad like that. So this is a simple example of like that stuff happens all day long, every day, and we're so busy going, right? Everybody else is going, oh my God, guess what happened? Lost my iPad on the plane. I can't. You know, we're telling that narrative. We're creating that.
Yeah.
Like somebody's like, you know, God's up there like smacking us with something, making our life hard versus going, here's something fun, here's something fun, here's something fun. Try that, try that. Notice your narrative. I love it.
Yeah. So this thought came up. The how only matters when we're not committed.
Yeah. And
Like,
oh gosh, the answer is yes, right? And who cares, right? Like how is a silly question.
right.
If you know where you're going, you'll get there, right? I had a really fun session with a client on Friday. It was actually my first session with him. We've known each other for a little bit, but we were really getting into it. And I started out by asking, you know, have you made any mistakes in your life? And he goes, oh yeah, so many. I said, okay. What if you didn't? And he was like, what? Huh? But I did. I said, well, sure, that's one way to look at it. You know, let's just imagine we're in a car. You look out the rearview mirror and you see a lot of stuff going on. You see like, you know, a car wreck there. I said, there's stuff that happened. What if you woke up one day and all the stuff you saw at the rear mirror, you knew wasn't a problem, an accident, a failure, right? What if you just knew that? And he's like, well, that's not the case. I said, oh, I know it's not the case. I'm sure those are problems. But just as a logical test, right, as a thought experiment, imagine the possibility that you saw everything that happened in your life is occurring exactly the way it was supposed to. There were no mistakes. He goes, well, that would be interesting. I said, yeah, it would. I said, what would it mean about everything out the front of the car? He goes, well, it would mean I couldn't screw anything up. I was like, yeah, exactly. Right? That shift in mindset. Right? Most people look out the rearview mirror and call them mistakes, thinking that's going to help them avoid problems out front. It doesn't. It just creates more problems out front.
I love this. Yeah. I had a coaching call this morning and we talked about truths and how truths are subjective and everybody's got their own version and they could all be right. You know, they can all be right. And then they go about it talking about their version of the truth and living their world from that vision of what they hold as reality. And what you're saying is that when you stretch out of your known reality, let's say that your reality is this island, right? And you start to look at what's possible, right? You imagine the possibility that there's another way of looking at the world. You start to realize that the island's not the only thing in the universe, that there might be a continent out there that you've never explored because you've never imagined the possibility that you make it all up anyway. And yeah. I went through your course, you know, you let me come to that. That was amazing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right.
Yeah. And you helped me to stretch into the imagination of what's possible for life. I mean, if you talk about there's no accidents and you can literally create an extraordinary life. Can you go into that imagination and that visualizing and what that does for you?
I can. I'd like to share a story I think that would be helpful to folks. It just showed up for me, and it has to do with what you were saying, this, you know, the relative nature of truth, right? What we perceive as reality, right, that we think is coming this way at us, right? We think these are little camera lenses. They're actually projectors. We're projecting what's happening. That may be a little over the head if some people just sound too fluffy. I'm not a real fluffy guy for people.
I could go into the science of it if you want. But
no, that's okay. Steve would say that whatever we're creating out here is a function of what we're committed to. Right? Our commitment to something. I'll give you a simple example of that. Yesterday, somewhere along the day, my wife was concerned because there was something that I was doing relative to a storage unit we have in Denver. The details don't really matter. And she goes, we never talked about that. You're doing something that we never talked about, right? I think anybody listening who has a relationship can find a situation where that happened in their life. Somebody says, never talked about that. And my thought is, well, yeah, we did, right? that makes sense, right? Yeah, there's something where your spouse says, we never talked about that, and you says, yes, we did, in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So now we have two differing views of reality. We had the conversation, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
Now here's where it gets interesting. She shared what she said, and I said, oh, well, I apologize for never speaking about you with this. Let's have the conversation, and whatever mess I made by not talking to you about it, I'm going to clean that up. Now, between you, me, and the fence post, I have a memory that we talked about it, but that's not important to me. What's important to me is my relationship with my wife. What I'm committed to is a loving, harmonious, beautiful relationship in support of my wife, Louisa Milano. I'm not all that committed to being right. But sometimes in my life in the past, I have been more committed, and it's been more important to me to be right than to be in a loving moment with somebody, right? So somebody says, well, it didn't happen that way. And I said, well, says who? If she says it happened that way, well, I got a choice. I can be committed to love with her and see it her way, because why not? Or I can be committed to, I'm right.
Yeah.
If you're fighting with somebody and arguing, guess what you're committed to? Not being love in that moment. You're committed to something else. That's not bad or wrong, but just notice it, right? The truth is subjective. Reality is subjective. Who cares whether we talked about it? If she says we didn't talk about it, we didn't talk about it. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Because that's where she's coming from. So I'm going to meet her right there, and now we'll talk about it.
It's so interesting. I have a brother and sister. They both have the same story, and it happened to both of them, but one of them has the scar. But they're both right. It happened to both of them. And I've heard this thought around the observer effect. And Ryan and I have used this in our trainings, is to rise above everything. Astronauts, when they go into space, they get above it all, and all the lines and rules and regulations and rightness and wrongness goes away. It's just, we're all on a planet, right? And what you have to do, what I'm hearing and what you're doing, not what you have to do, but what you're doing in this space is you're deciding what you're committed to by what your vision is, like rising above it and seeing from their perspective what it might be like to experience this whole thing from your point of view or from their point of view. You're deciding in that space, is the relationship the most important? Is being right most important? You're really deciding on your
being
commitment.
in love. It's being love in this moment, right? Do I want to be judgment? Do I want to be love? It all comes down to that.
Wow.
Right? I was talking to my son yesterday, and he's needing some help, both my sons, with getting an apartment in Salt Lake and fronting some money. And I found myself having a conversation with him from a place of, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about the other thing? Which you might call fatherly care, but it's actually judgment of how he's going to screw it up, right? And I had to, in that moment, notice that the conversation I was having was being created not by my commitment to love him, but by commitment to keeping him safe, or, him not screwing something up, or, me not getting shorted on whatever money I'm fronting for him. Again, they're not better decisions or worse decisions. It's just noticing. And the more you look, the more you see that whatever's happening, what we call reality, and we'll fight to the death for,
wow,
right, is just created by this crazy thing that sits on our head. One of the fun expressions or sayings I like to say to folks is, what if you were just willing to bulldoze that hill you keep trying to die on? Right? We got all these hills we try to die on. It's like, well, you can also bulldoze them and not worry about it. And then well, that's who I am. No, that's who you're choosing to be in the moment. And trust me, that's from a guy who used to look in the eye and say, no, this is how I am. This is how the world is. Well, you'll see someday that gets you some results, but it also sucks the life out of you. Anyway.
Yeah.
We can talk about the vision thing too, if you want.
I do want to talk about that. I want to talk about, what you brought up here in the book. So the giants and the smalls in the book, there are smalls and there are giants, right? And so it's all internal. It's one person's world, but it's what goes on within us. And we have the opportunity to live a small life or a giant life.
Yeah.
And they're both real, and they both have their reasons and their justifications and their stories around it.
Yeah.
And they're both available to us.
Yep.
And we sit there and we wonder, like, well, I can't ever be a giant. I can't do that because I'm not special. Well, you get to be right.
Yeah.
You know, like you were talking about earlier, that we set up our fence of, well, I can't do that. I'm busy. And that becomes our fence post. You know, that's my property line. I'm busy. And then another guy that has all the time in the world. I got plenty of time for you. Yeah. I got more time than I can handle. Yeah. What can I do for you? And that becomes his marker, right?
Yep. It's all created. Yeah. I love that. I loved your book. I got it. Steve gave me a copy on Thursday and I read it. And, I mean, I got so much from it and I can't wait to share it with people. One of the things I saw that was interesting was, you know, there's a fundamental question of, how do I become a giant? Right. And I love that question. I think that's very instructive. One of the things that's unique to my journey and as such, my people these days is they're already giants, right? I was a giant in some areas of my life. Yeah, right. Yeah. As it came to creating money, I was a giant. What I didn't see is that there were these other areas of my life where, man, I was small. Right. So a lot of coaches, right? A lot of people go to work with a coach where they say, I want to be an expert at this. I want to be extraordinary at that. Right. And they want to be extraordinary in one area of their life. I have this incredible gratefulness to be in this part of my career where the people I serve, they're already giants in one area of their life. They're already extraordinary in one area of their life, but now they want it everywhere.
Yeah,
right?
wow.
They want it. So there's a different question you ask. You have to stop at some point saying, how do I stop being a small and be a giant? Because once you're a giant, you're like, oh, this is cool, I can do it. The next question is, well, I'm a giant, but where am I not being that giant?
Yeah, that question becomes, what else can I do? Right?
Yeah. Where am I not being who I actually am? Yeah. Right. One of the things I'd say is commitment. The game of commitment is all about a commitment to seeing where you're not committed. Huh. Right? People want to go, I'm committed to this. Cool. Where are you not? Because that's what's going to create the growth. That's what's going to create the expansiveness. That's going to get you more. That's going to get you extraordinary in every area. You know, relationships, love, children, community, sleep, physical fitness, all those things. You gotta stop saying, well, I'm a giant, darn it. You got to say, I'm a giant, but where am I not being one?
Man,
so I love the book.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Ryan, I'm curious.
Thanks keeping that PG too, darn it.
I'm doing my best. I tend to have a potty mouth, so I'm doing my real best here.
Golly darn it. Where am I not a giant? I love that.
Well, so we have a 12-step program for, it's not AA, but it could be, I guess. Yeah. But we have a 12-step program for becoming a giant. And one of the final steps is, what else can I do? And you go back through the process again, and you become a giant in another area. And so it's never ending. I mean, the pinnacles that we can reach, the summits that we can reach, somebody described as a mountain without a top.
I love that.
And I think when you and I talked, or when we were talking earlier before the show, you were talking about, getting that whole picture, like maximizing your potential in every area, right?
Yeah. Where's my life not extraordinary such that I can create it as that, right? And so many people, and this is fascinating to me, guys, because they think working with a coach or somebody is for problems. Oh, what do you do? I'm a coach. Oh, yeah, I worked with a coach once. Yeah, my life's really good right now. It's like, cool, good for you, awesome. So is mine, right? Where's it not? What? People don't think like that. It's like, my life's amazing. I have the greatest job in the world. I have the greatest kids in the world. I have the greatest, most amazing wife in the world. We travel all over. We live where we want. And I still wake up every day and go, so what else we got here? Not because I need more, not because I'm lacking, not because I have to have something, because it's fun, right? How many more people can I touch? How many more people can I show that there's so much more, right? We're just scratching, every time I talk with Steve, it's like, we're just scratching the surface. Like, that's my favorite line with him. We're just scratching the surface. You could play the game, I got everything I need. That's one way to play. I play a game called, I'm barely getting started. I got so much more to do, you know. That's a more
Yeah.
fun game to me. Because in one game, and here's the punchline. In the game I got everything I want. That sounds really cool. The problem is when you have everything you want, what's the only thing you think about? How you can lose some of it. Right? That's what people don't realize when they play the game called I have everything I want. It's actually a sucker's game. If you have everything you want, the only thought going to pop in your head is, well, how do I keep it? How do I not screw this up? Because you think you're done. That's the worst game in the world to play. I play a game called I'm not even started yet.
What was it? Steve Hardison shared something the other day. He said, men don't create abundance. Men create scarcity. Did you see that?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds like something Steve would say.
Yeah. I mean, but the thought of that is that abundance just is, it just exists. And what we do is, like you said, that thinking is, well, I've already got everything. How do I keep it? That immediately creates the idea of limitation and scarcity.
Right. Like, we are infinite creators. We are here to do more, create more, build more. Now, some people make the mistake of turning that game into reality. Like, well, I need more to be happier.
Right.
No, I'm as happy as I'll ever be. And I don't need more to be happier because I won't be happier. I'm already happy. But I'm going to go create more.
So can we talk about that word? Happy?
Sure. Yeah.
So I struggle with it a little bit, that pursuit of happiness and happiness I see as an emotion that's fleeting, just like anger or sadness or anything else. And
yes.
And what I hear more that would be more relevant would almost be a satiation or a homeostasis, like a satisfaction with your life, and you can be satisfied at any level. But happiness, this idea of happiness is there's an emotion that comes up with happiness that's fleeting. It's like if cavemen were happy constantly, they'd never hunt another elephant.
Well, so now you're mixing metaphors, right?
Okay,
you're
help me out.
You're tying the emotional state, happiness, to what's that word when people don't want to do something, they're lazy, but we confuse happiness like, well, if I'm happy, then I won't be motivated.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Or I won't be hungry. It's like, oh, that's silly. I get hungry every day and I'm happy every meal I eat. I don't understand. It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So absolutely, happiness is the emotional experience versus, to me, peace, which is the neutral, right? I can be happy. I can be sad. I can be at peace in both.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. There you go. I like that.
Right? I've been deeply, deeply filled with sorrow and pain and absolutely at peace. Right. I've also been incredibly happy and not peaceful. Right. So sort of, apples and oranges in a way. Peace to me is simply, what somebody put up there. Be at peace with what is. What I would say is that's what peace is. Peace is acceptance that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's peace. Acceptance is peace.
So agreement, that's where people get hung up on agreement, is they think acceptance is agreement. It doesn't mean you have to love it.
Yes, exactly. I can be an acceptance of somebody who committed a horrible crime. I don't need to agree with them. Right? I certainly don't.
Right.
But I can be an acceptance that that's what happened.
Right.
Wow, we got into it here this morning.
I like the rabbit holes. It's the Mandelbrot branches. Let's call it that, where we get off the course and it just opens up a new reality. Yeah. The beauty is that being at peace with your life, wherever it is, really opens the door for you to create even more, because then it becomes a game. Yeah. Because when you're resisting it, what I notice is that the more I resist things, the more they stay around and the more I create of that. And it's just, that's where my attention is. That's all it means. It's not right or wrong. It's just, that's where my attention is.
Yep. Acceptance is what creates freedom always, right? Acceptance of anything allows it to move on, right? And choose something else. I want to be happy as much as possible. Why wouldn't you? Right? It's nice to be happy. I'm not attached to being happy. And if I'm sad, I seek to be an acceptance of that sadness for as long as it's going to be around.
Right.
And I find when I'm in acceptance of it, it doesn't stick around that long. I don't try to get happy. If I'm unhappy or sad or in pain, I use acceptance to get to peace, right? And then whatever happens after that. I don't worry about it. And usually it's something comes along that generates happiness. But we get confused, right? There's this idea that that there is happiness and sadness is a law of nature, right? Everything has an opposite.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yep.
The problem happens when we believe we're supposed to pursue one at the exclusion of the other. Right? Like, well, I'm supposed to be happy. Well, yeah, sometimes you're also supposed to be pissed off and sad sometimes. That's how this works. Right? And the more you get, that's how this works. And it's not wrong to be unhappy, the less you tend to spend there. And that's sort of a weird thing for people to get to. It's like, well, how do I get happy? It's like, well, stop worrying about when you're not. And they're like, huh? It's really simple. Path to happiness is not trying to get there and not worrying about when you're not there. And then you're happy a lot of the time.
I'm going to throw in a mathematical equation here. I just want to tie this in because what you've done is you've created a reality, an extraordinary life that stretches the vision, right, of what's possible for somebody. When people are looking at their lives, they think my life is self-similar. Like every day is the same. I'm just spinning in circles. Usually when that happens is when they're in a negative cycle, they feel like they're just stuck. They don't really necessarily go backward. Sometimes they do, but there's a set point where they only go so far.
Yes.
But they stay in a circle. And I'm thinking of Mandelbrot's equation where he says that you take a number and you square it and you add a number to that, right?
Yeah.
And that's a positive. And if you added a negative number to it, it would be a negative. But whenever you add a negative, it bounces back between that negative and zero. And it can only go so far. Like you take an apple away, it's not like you can go negative 100 apples. There just aren't 100 apples. So you only go so far, right? You go to zero. And so the idea is that when you're in that negative loop and you're spinning is that you're usually doing a negative thing that keeps you spun up. So when you can do one positive in a positive direction, just a simple equation, then you spiral upward and outward and your life changes drastically. But when you negative, it stays the same. When you positive, it expands and grows. And so the idea here is that people think, well, my life is self-similar. It's almost like it was yesterday, like Groundhog Day. But when you add a positive to it, you see a slight shift or sometimes a monumental shift. Like I see in your case, you're stretching the threshold of how far can I go? You know?
Yeah. Well, and the answer is it's infinite, right? And that's sort of the challenge.
Yep.
I use a concept I call we live our life within a frame. Right. And like think of a picture frame. So from the time we're young, we create a frame for what's possible, right? How well we'll do in sports, how we'll do in school, what college, whatever. We build a frame of what's possible. And often that frame is set by our parents, teachers, preachers, people like that, right? Oh, you'll never do that. Oh, you can be whatever you want. So we're naturally expansive. We expand into whatever container we create, whatever space we believe is possible, we'll find our way to the edge of that frame. Here's the problem. When you're in the middle of the frame, looking at the outside, it feels expansive. You're growing. This is good. You're focused on how do I get there? As we get closer to the edge of the frame, well, we're bumping up against it. There's nothing else to see. We start looking back at the center going, oh, I don't want to go back there. And our experience of life becomes more contractive. And, oh, I don't want to lose it. I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to, mess this up.
And that becomes our reality, right?
Well, it is our reality. Most people that you would point to and say, oh, well, they're successful. All they have done throughout their lives is build a bigger frame. As they approach the edge, they go, okay, well, what's next? And they surround themselves with people who live in bigger frames. Here's where it gets, I think, interesting. Every human being that is expanding gets to the edge of the biggest frame that they've ever built, that they ever can build by themselves, right? I was living a pretty big life 10 years ago. Right? People who knew me are like, oh my God, what you do is incredible. It didn't feel so to me. I was in a much bigger frame than maybe they were, just to use the analogy, because I'd constantly built bigger frames. I had hit the limit of my frame building. Right? I didn't know how to build a bigger frame. So people could go, oh my God. And this is why when you look at somebody who has everything and go, oh, they must be happy, they're probably miserable. Because even though they have more stuff and they're in a bigger frame, if they're at the edge of it, they're going to feel the same sense of, oh my God, I've talked to multimillionaires who are still going, oh, but I could lose it all and be on the street someday, right? Same experience. So this is where, divine intervention or working with somebody or being around other people is really helpful, right? The reason I started seeking out coaches was I ran out of the limits of my own ability to create a bigger life that I could grow into. Why do I work with Steve Hardison? Well, I think I found a guy who has an infinite capacity for building frames. I call him my magic genie. I say every 2 weeks I go to Phoenix and then Mesa, and I meet with my magic genie, and whatever I wish for, me and the magic genie create it. That's really awesome, people say. I said, yeah, the problem is after a couple weeks, you're out of wishes. Because what do you wish for? Like, I got everything I want. This is where the genie comes in. That's really helpful. The genie helps you come up with better wishes, right? The real value of the genie ain't the granting of the wishes. It's coming up with better wishes. That's what limits our life. It's not accomplishing something. It's coming up with a vision for what we even want. That's what slows us down. That's what people don't get. They think it's a getting to problem. No, it's a dreaming problem.
Yeah, the vision, right? You limit your vision on what you know. I want to honor, we're coming up, and this went by so fast. Like, I could keep going with you for a while, and maybe we will for a minute here, if you're okay. But I want to honor, going back to what you created with your family and your relationship with your sons, being a father, to honor that one, but to talk about that creation and how that came about, to maybe go through that process so people can see an example. Can you do that?
Yeah. Well, I think the most powerful one, so this was a couple of years after the divorce. It wasn't fun, right? And this was, two people at loggerheads, lots of attorneys, lots of money spent, custody battles. Like, you look up catastrophic divorce in the dictionary, and this was it. And I really do believe it was, divine intervention at some point, which had me see, and I just caught this glimpse of, I'm creating it. I'm creating my ex-wife this way. I'm creating a relationship. I'm creating my kids this way. And I remember the day that I said, I've made a decision. I'm declaring that this relationship will be whole, right? I wanted my children to know that their creators were whole and complete, even if they weren't married. And I said, I'm committed to that with everything in my life. That will happen. And I'll know it's happened when we can all sit down and share a meal together with whoever we're dating, whatever's going on, right? I didn't know how I'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting this woman, right? She tried to have me thrown in jail a couple times because I didn't follow some provision of our agreement. I had no idea how I was going to do it, right? But I knew I was done whatever I was doing, and I needed to get really committed to what it is I wanted, the vision for what all I did was wake up and think about, we're going to be sitting at this table, we're going to be sitting around, we're going to be laughing again. We're not going to be together. That wasn't the goal, right? I'll be with somebody, and I just kept focusing on and recommitting to that. And it was probably 2.5 years later where it actually happened. It was my son's 16th birthday. We invited my ex over. I was with somebody, I don't remember if she brought somebody, but it was incredible, right? And to me, that's the power of getting really clear about where do you want to be. Most people go, well, how are you going to do that? There's no prescription for how. You got to get really clear on the where. And, I could tell you dozens of stories of things with my kids. Right? They both went through really tough times, had their own dances with substances and getting in trouble, and, you name it, it was rough. They both did a tour of duty at what I like to call their get their stuff together school. For a couple of years, a very expensive school that when you run out of other options. And at some point, you got to stop. Back to the entrepreneur journey, you got to stop going, what solution do I need to this problem, and ask a different question, which is, how is this problem keep showing up? Must be something I'm doing, or it wouldn't be here. Either I'm doing something or I need to learn something. And that's really hard, right? Because our ego says, well, this isn't my fault, right? And wants to give you the whole business case of all the things you did that this shouldn't happen. And yet here we are. So that's the challenge, and I think we're gonna get shortcut by my battery life here in a minute on my computer because I'm outside. So that'll end our time together one way.
No, let's wrap it there. I mean, that was beautiful because that's an example of what's possible when you set the vision so clearly.
Anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is. And somebody just mentioned, I limit myself by my own vision. What's possible.
Always.
You have a genie that can tell you that there's always more infinite ways that you can create.
Yeah.
Your story of creating that with your family is phenomenal. You had the vision. You didn't have the how. You didn't create from the how. You created from that being the right now. That's what you talk about.
Yep. Yeah.
Is there any final piece of wisdom you want to share with the viewers?
Surround yourself with people. Seek people out who are dreaming bigger than you, and ask them what they're dreaming about. That's the conversation we don't have enough of. Right? Everybody talks about what they're doing and what happened yesterday and how their day was and traffic. That's watch the words that come out of your mouth and see how much time is spent talking about what's in the rearview mirror. Right? Ask people, what are they creating? What are they working on? What are they excited about? Just that one little question will change everything in your life.
I love that. Yeah. Ryan, I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts as we wrap up here.
Fantastic. I like, there's some background noise here in Matt, but conversation and hearing looking in the rearview mirror made me think of my life and like what the blind spots and the things where I'm not a giant. And so to look back giant in certain areas, but where am I not? Where can I go here? How can I change that and then there and then not worry about the how?
Yeah,
like
beautiful.
I don't know if it's counterintuitive, but just there and go and start moving, start doing, start being.
Yeah, I love it.
And I appreciate you pointing out some of my blind spots. You didn't know it, but you did. So I'm gonna go surround myself with another giant today, and ask him, or maybe ask him to not for more wishes, but what else could I dream of? What else could I do?
This will be a meeting you'll never forget, man. You'll never forget it.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Steve
Thanks,
Hardison.
guys. Have fun today with Steve.
Yeah. Hey, Townsend, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much. And there's so much more in you. Like we haven't even touched the surface. We haven't even scratched the surface.
Not even close. Yep.
Yeah. So for those that are watching, spend some time with Townsend. Look him up. Follow him. Really explore your life. Hang out with giants. Guys and girls that are dreaming bigger than you. People that are dreaming bigger than you can imagine. Start hanging out with them, and ask them that question. What are your giant dreams? What are you dreaming about today? Man, I just love this show and where it went. And I can't wait to explore more with you. For those that are watching, go out there, make it a giant day. Create the vision that you have in mind. Create the vision. Don't worry about the how. And go after it. Commit to it. So any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, this is great. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank
you guys make it a giant.
You
Yeah.
too.
See you guys.